Yo, you guys, this is Blacklist of the Abyss, and you're watching my review for Fairy Tail Chapter 474. Alright, and listen, you guys, I'm just gonna go through this chapter real quickly because it's not worth wasting time on. It's just not. Okay? At the beginning of the chapter, Happy acted like he was gonna go do something. It sounded like he was trying to. If this was any other manga, I'd say this was a death flag, but it's Happy, and we all know that Happy never really accomplishes anything. The one time he actually accomplished something was with freaking Jackal in Tartarus, and it wasn't even like anything big. He just came with an afro, it, the entire situation was treated like a joke, you know. So that's what and anything Happy does is just going to be treated like a joke, and therefore not that serious and not that big of a deal. All right, so I don't care about this line from Happy saying he's gonna do whatever it takes to save Natsu, and he's not gonna do crap. All right, he's like Chopper. Okay, he says he's gonna save a bunch of people, and then he's just gonna make Law do it. Okay, no, Happy isn't gonna help Natsu out, and someone else is going to do it. Okay. Now, meanwhile, Makarov is trying to find some actual help in the form of Mavis. All right, he asks her to come up with a strategy for beating Zareth and the rest of the 12 spring. Well, there's less than 12 of them now, but you know what I mean. Just to defeat Zareth and the rest of the Spriggans. So she's going to think about that. Next, Meredy shows up to help Gray, Juvia, and Leon, or Leon, or Lion, however you want to pronounce his name. I've heard it pronounced like 20 different ways. All right. Next, Jalal shows up to help out Urza and Kagura. We don't really get to see much of Kagura's reaction here to seeing Jalal. What we did get, though, is a couple panels of Urza fighting and Kagura making a joke about the fact that Urza is supposed to be injured, and she's just no-selling the injuries. She's fighting like she's 100%, and Kagura's like, "Aren't you supposed to be hurt?" And it's like, yes, yes, she is. You know, like that. You can't just completely contradict something that you wrote into your story and then just write it off like a joke. Like you can't, you can't do that. Like if this was if this was freaking Deadpool, then okay, that's one thing. But it's not Deadpool. All right, like if you build up a series from chapter one into being a type of series that is willing to contradict itself for the sake of comedy, then that's one thing. But that's not what Fairy Tail is. Okay, so it's ridiculous to have Urza be completely wrecked and just damaged and injured and hurt, and then literally the very next day have her be 100% fighting like she's not injured at all, and then just joke about how little sense it makes. That's not okay. Okay, it just doesn't make sense. All right. Lastly, we see Demaria reveal her power. It is in fact time manipulation. It's called Time Sealing Magic Age Seal. Okay, so she stops time and she tries to kill Wendy. All right, but her and Sharia and Charles, all of them just all of a sudden begin to move again. So you're sitting there wondering, like, okay, clearly something had to happen. And it did happen. It turns out there's another person there who can manipulate time, and that person is Ultir. And you know, I'm sure I'm sure Hiro Mashima is gonna come up with some reason for why this makes sense. The last time we saw her, she was an old woman. She had her time taken away from her because she used the one magic and reversed, and she rewound time for like a second and a half, whatever. But that second and a half managed to be enough to save Gray's life and change the entire tide of the battle. All right, but um, she didn't know that. But anyway, the point is, the last time we saw her, she had gotten her time taken away from her, and she was an old woman. But now she's back here, young again. And I don't really care whether it makes sense or not, because we see people like Ward who whose appearance changes. I'm sure he'll be able to come up with some reason for why it makes sense for her to be here. That's not what I care about. My problem is that piece of writing at the end of the Dragon King Festival, Grand Magic Games, whatever you want to call it, when Ultir was written out of the story. That was one of my favorite pieces of writing that Hiro Mashima has ever done with Fairy Tail. That was so well written, and it was the perfect way to write Ultir out of the series. and it was after the Grand Magic Games and the Magic King, the Dragon King Festival. I'm thinking of Trinity 7. After the Grand Magic Games and the Dragon King Festival, those were not good arcs, and that was the period where most people who dropped Fairy Tail dropped it. It was during those two arcs, okay, and those span of chapters where Zareth showed up and and Ultir was written out of the series. Those few chapters, for a lot of people, me included, were what got us. They were it was those chapters that made us decide we were going to keep reading Fairy Tail because there was a pattern. There's a pattern of Fairy Tail. I've mentioned it before. The arcs always start off well and they get bad. Then they look like they're about to get good again, but then they just get worse than they were before. And then it gets really amazing and then just awful again, and then that's how it ends. Right? And then the new arc starts and it's good again. It's just good, then bad, amazing, then worse, and then new arc starts, it's good again. That's how Fairy Tail is. Alright? And it was chapters like these that got me to accept that and know that, you know what, I accept that Fairy Tail is going to be bad sometimes, but if it means getting chapters like this, then I'm willing to keep reading. Okay? The way Ultir was written out of the series, it was written so well. And my problem is that he just made it all completely pointless. It's all completely useless now. He just undid all of that great writing, and it's disappointing. It really is. All for the sake of a plot twist. He's turning into Tite Kubo. It's like I'm reading Bleach now. Like Hiro Mashima has talent as a writer. If you've read Rave Master, then you know he has talent as a writer. If you've read some of those chapters of Fairy Tail that are just really good, you know he can write well when he wants to. So I don't understand why he does this. I just don't understand why he does this. He can't. He has to know that it's bad. He has to. He wrote too consistently well for too long to all of a sudden just be really bad. I don't know. Maybe he has just lost it and he doesn't know what's good anymore. Or maybe he just knows that he can follow this formula and Fairy Tail will still be popular, so there's no point in putting in the effort to write. Because, I mean, he's doing Fairy Tail Zero, Fairy Tail Ice Trail, or whatever, and he had the monthly Fairy Tail magazine at some point. Like, this guy is a freak of nature with his drawing speed. That's the one thing people will never be able to criticize Hiro Mashima about. Ichiro Oda, the author of One Piece, gets like 3 hours of sleep every week just doing one chapter, and this guy will come out with that one time he did 6 chapters in 2 weeks. Like, this guy is a drawing machine, okay? But maybe the only way he can actually draw at that pace is to neglect the story, and he knows that he can afford to do that because Fairy Tail will still make money via the sales for the manga, sales for the anime, merchandise. Maybe he knows that he can just keep making money off of Fairy Tail just by neglecting the money, or just by neglecting the story. I mean, maybe that's it. There's no excuse for this. He didn't have to give Demaria a time manipulation power. It's not like he had no choice but to bring Ultir back. He had a choice. He didn't have to give Demaria this power. He could have given her something else. Okay, there's no excuse for this degree of neglect. All right, so I'm giving this chapter, I don't even know because part of me wants to be fair and say that, okay, the end of the chapter was awful, but the rest of the chapter wasn't really that bad. It was mediocre and average, but it wasn't really bad. But a part of me is saying, who cares? If he's neglecting this chapter, then maybe I should neglect the rating and just give it a really incredibly low rating. But at the end of the day, I'm a fair person, and while the ending was incredibly awful, most of it was average. So I'll give this chapter a 3 out of 10. I'll just meet you in the middle there. I'll give this chapter a 3 out of 10, and that's that, you guys. Rate, comment, subscribe. Follow me on Twitter at BlacklistOTA. and I'll see you guys next time.